It seems as though the I-5 bridge will never get its damn replacement. Welcome to Politics 101, especially in the United States, and even more so with frickin' infrastructure. So, the reason why I say that is because it has actually been a obscenely long time since the first point in time where they said, hey, the bridge needs to be replaced. It has a little bit of integrity issues, it's aging. In fact, I'm not 100% sure, I'd have to look it back up, but I'm pretty sure the original point in time was at latest like 2015. So almost, we're closing in on like a decade ago, if not further back. It doesn't matter what the plan has been, what the plans are, anything that's been proposed. It just hasn't worked. And when I say it hasn't worked at all. There's been constant backlash from the citizens, so the residents, the communities, both in Vancouver and obviously in Portland, and even the surrounding areas of Vancouver and Portland have been chirping in on that. There's been a lot of backlash from that. There's been a lot of controversy around that, and obviously disputes. There's been disputes, of course, among the stupid puppets we call politicians themselves as well, of course. There's been disputes between Washington and Oregon in terms of the governments, between Portland and Vancouver and the municipal governments. There's even been some disputes between the counties of Clark and Multnomah. There's been disputes between the residents up in Vancouver and the Vancouver area and the Portland and Portland area. There's been disputes pretty much every point you could possibly turn. And now, and between transit agencies. C-Tran, that's Clark County's transit agency for the Vancouver area, and then TriMet for Clackamas, Multnomah, and Washington counties, obviously, and all the cities within it. They actually are part of the governments that make up the multi-governmental corporation, posing as a transit agency that's totally autonomous and independent from government. Right. The TriMet is. Anyway, the point being, there's even disputes between those two as well. And now, on top of all of those other disputes that we've had incessantly on the proposals for the Max Bridge, or the that's a Freudian slip, the I-5 bridge replacement, is now additionally the fucking Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is now disputing all of the plans for the bridge. I guess it sounds like apparently the state kind of settled on a plan for the bridge, at least in terms of its overall dimensions and height. And the Coast Guard says, no, not on our watch, no pun intended. Not on our watch, not happening. Not happening. This is not good enough. Because their dispute is the bridge simply isn't high enough. So the new bridge, for the current design that I guess is apparently the main one that they're focusing on trying to get past to build, is 116 feet in height with a fixed span. And the existing bridge obviously has two spans, both of which are lifts. So instead of being fixed spans, they literally lift up in order to allow for much more clearance for ships to pass through. And it lifts up to 178 feet. Apparently, according to the planner's most optimistic timeline, construction is unlikely to begin until 2025 or beyond. So in other words, we have no clue when. So they're not even confident that they're going to be able to get it done. After a full environmental review of the bridge design. But the Coast Guard will have to, of course, first, before even the environmental design, need to sign off on a permit. So in other words, it's even less likely to happen now, because the Coast Guard pretty much, I guess, has to be the final gavel on it before you can actually move forward with it. But there's so many infinite disputes from anybody you could possibly think of against all of the different designs proposed for this I-5 bridge. So much so that my proposal is, why not just fucking make it out of its infinite list of disputes that's ever growing every single goddamn month? Like, seriously, it's already infinite, and it has an infinite amount of influx of more disputes. Why not just make the new bridge? Instead, say, fuck it, we'll make it out of all these infinite amount of disputes. Because at least then, it's an infinite resource we can use to actually build the fucking bridge. And then on top of building it, repair. Because it's constantly incoming, and it's inevitable we'll keep doing it anyway after it's built, so why not just do that? That's my proposal. Washington State, their government, Clark County's government, the city of Vancouver's government, C-Tran, and even all the residents of Vancouver in the area are the biggest opponents, the biggest anti-standers against the concept of bringing a MAX line, a light rail line, across the river with the new bridge north into Vancouver. They don't want that. And I, as a lifelong Reliant... Why do people blast their bass like that? The back door is closed, the windows are closed right now because I'm recording the video. What the fuck, man? How do you not have a heart attack? That's gotta interrupt your electrical rhythms in your heart. Anyway, so as a lifelong Reliant writer on TriMet, I wholeheartedly agree with them. Don't fucking pull the damn MAX forward. I could not be more anti-light rail, especially considering that even the world, like Canberra, they had to fight against it, but Canberra's government were like, but TriMet though. Look at the MAX. What a utopia. Bullshit. I need to make an entire video, even just a showcase video where I don't say anything, just to prove how wickedly, horrifically terrible MAX light rail is, let alone light rail in general as a transit mode is. Light rail is infinitely the worst mode of transportation, public transportation, ever invented. Maybe with the exception of trolleybuses. In fact, definitely with the exception of trolleybuses. But beyond that, it is the worst. There is a relentless daily list you can watch unfold. Each individually is a more reason and proof that light rail is woefully inefficient, so agonizingly inefficient, endlessly more than buses, endlessly less reliable than any other mode of transit you can imagine. It is so frail. It is such a fail. No. Just fucking no. No more of that shit. And it costs billions of dollars, literally per mile, to build? Yeah, I don't fucking think so. I could go on and on about that. So I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with them. No fucking light rail across the Columbia fucking River into Washington. Let's not ruin them too. They are probably already more than efficient enough to do it to themselves. Bridge height also caused friction during the last incarnation of the project when Oregon and Washington agreed to pay millions of dollars to 3 companies located upriver whose products, drill rigs and other massive pieces of equipment, wouldn't fit under the proposed Columbia River crossing. Disputes over light rail and the Washington legislature's decision not to fund the bridge eventually torpedoed that version of the project in 2014. So yeah, it was before 2015. See, I thought I remembered it being longer than a decade, and I guess it is. It's like, it's been a long time since they first said we need to replace this bridge. A long time. And for context, 2008 would be exactly half of my lifespan so far. Because in 2008, I was 14. I'm 28 now. It wouldn't be surprised if it was like 2010. So we're talking half of an entire, nearly 30-year-old's lifespan has gone by. And nothing's happened because of disputes. Isn't politics just great? Shoot me. Also why I refuse to ever get involved in transit directly in terms of anything in North America, at least, because it's always political. It's not worth my fucking time. Because nothing I'll ever want to implement will ever get implemented, and nothing I'll say will ever work. So why even bother? Anyway, let's plug politics. Greg Johnson, the director of the Interstate Replacement Bridge Replacement Program, said in a written statement that the Coast Guard's decision is preliminary and that his team had anticipated pushback on the height. He said while he understood the Coast Guard is focused on keeping navigation open on the water, his team's goals are much broader. The IBR program has the responsibility to identify the multimodal solution that not only addresses needs of navigation, but of those of all program area users, including air transit, freight, vehicle, and active transportation. This is bullshit, because every single time a US planner, whether it's transit or city or both, claims that it's about multimodal, it's never multimodal. What they mean is, hey, we'll put a light rail line on it. There you go. How multimodal? Kind of like, a Renko. apparently the best, most utopian, universal North American example of correctly done TOD, transit-oriented development, because, you know, you have a light rail line, and that's really it, because you can't really count the 46 that goes to Orenco Station, because it only runs during rush hour, and nobody actually really genuinely takes that bus ever anyway. You'll never see a single person at any point in the day, usually, ever waiting to take that bus at Orenco or anywhere. Nobody takes it. Because even as a transfer bus, a connector to a different bus line, it's just not worth your time. That bus is like a ghost line. It's a phantom line. It doesn't need to exist. You know, the only reason why TriMet even created that bus line was literally just so they could pull it there and say, see, multimodal, transit-oriented. Okay, we're done. Wipes hands. Because it's an excuse. That's all it is. It's not. It's far from transit-oriented, and it's far from affordable, and it's far from multimodal. But that's what they mean whenever they say multimodal in this nation. So remember that. Whether it's down in Tampa Bay or whatever the fuck you might be, or here in the Portland, Vancouver area, it's inevitability. When they say multimodal, all they really mean is one single thing, and it's probably going to be light rail for some reason. It's just the gentrification machine of choice. So capital projects, they get their kickbacks if the only with light rail ever in this country, which is stupid, but that's what it is. So that's what they mean by multimodal, is light rail. Yeah, fuck that. If you want to be properly multimodal, but be sensible, even if it is only one multimodal line in terms of actual physical vehicular transit, buses, bus rapid transit, give them their own fucking piece of the bridge. Give them their own protected bus lanes. Something like that. Give them that so that you can have an express shuttle and actual transit lines that can use it both north and southbound on the I-5 bridge. And then, boom, guess what? You have your multimodal. It's way more infinitely efficient, endlessly more affordable, and endlessly more reliable than any form of rail could ever be, but especially light rail. So just do that. That's what I would propose. In fact, my actual genuine proposal, what I think would be the most logical decision by far for this new I-5 bridge, make it sensible and universal in the sense of, with the exception of light rail, exclude it. Don't even act like light rail is an option that exists. Instead of the light rail, add in the bus lanes. Or literally protected bus roadways, basically. I can't remember what they specifically call those. But yeah, that or just a protected lane. So that there's barriers even separating them would be the smartest. But you can even just have a simple bus-only lane. Make sure there's cameras on the bridge or whatever so that you can see if there's violators, and if there is, it'll automatically take the picture like true bus rapid transit systems always have on the buses, but you can also have it on the bridge. So they automatically snap pictures of violators who are violating the bus lanes and have strict traffic enforcement against those individuals who are being pompous assholes and deciding they're going to drive in the fucking bus lane because they're impatient assholes. Simple enough. That's all you have to do. It doesn't cost so much more, so do that. Add, it could be in the center, or preferably and most intelligently, add it on the outsides of the bridge, on the opposite side of the girders, if it's a girder bridge or a truss or whatever else. On the outside of the structure, but still connected to it directly, add bicycle and pedestrian paths. In fact, obviously it makes the most sense to combine them into one. Make sure it's nice and broad and wide so that there's plenty of space for people on bikes and on foot. Let them be able to go and, you know, cross the bridge freely on foot or on bike if they want to. That's also sensible. And there's a fuck ton of pedestrians, and there's a fuck ton of bikers, and there's a fuck ton of people who would absolutely adore to be able to go across that bridge, even if it's only halfway, just to take some pictures. Or just use it as like a viewpoint. You can even add a little alcoves along its length on both sides so people can stop, pull off to the side, and rest. You can even have a bench there. Let them be able to just look out and view the river. Downstream, upstream, doesn't matter. That's, to me, the most intelligent thing. You can do that too. That's a little bit of an extra, but you can still do that. It would be that much more convenient and great for these people to be able to have that. So add that on there too. Add a pedestrian section to the bridge. pedestrian bicyclist section to the bridge as well. So that way it's truly multimodal. You have the personal and industrial, commercial vehicles, traffic, you have the bus lanes, and with it, genuine enforcement. And then the pedestrian bicycle on, preferably instead of in the middle, which would be one, which would be the most efficient use of space. Instead, you put them on one side, one on the other side, so northbound, southbound. That would be the smartest one, I think, to be able to do for that design. That's what my proposal would be, is put those together like that. It is sensible, in my opinion, to make sure that you do have two separate spans for a fucking freeway, like I-5. That kind of an arterial, an artery, you absolutely require two separate spans of a bridge in order to make any sense, and also make it safer. So that way, you're not going to have cross traffic where somebody crashes into the fucking barrier and flips over into the northbound lanes if they're going southbound or vice versa. Like, don't be stupid, separate them into different spans. That's what I would do. So that they're two different spans, and that's how they connect. In fact, if anything, if you wanted to, you could actually still be more efficient use of space. Instead of adding it to one span and the other span, you could actually do what a lot of times, especially like South America bus rapid transit systems, which works wonders, you could instead put the bus lanes separated from the car lanes and stuff that in the middle in between the two spans. And then you have a northbound and southbound bus lane. And obviously, bus drivers are not going to be at risk of driving into each other's lanes. So that doesn't need necessarily any kind of a barrier between the lanes. You could still do it for safety reasons. If it makes it more comfortable, it's cheap. So you can put your concrete barriers there, whatever. That's cool too. But that's another way you could do it. Instead of putting it on the actual spans, right in between the two different spans of traffic, you put the bus lanes there instead. Although in an American road format, I can understand how that might cause conflict of direction and lanes. Maybe, unfortunately, requiring, more space to be taken up on the roadways for the lanes once they come off the bridges. But that's generally, either direction you go with the bus lane thing, that's my proposal personally. I think that makes the most sense. I think it would be great. And obviously, it would also contribute directly to the economy in the terms of tourism, but especially in terms of, unfortunately, Instagram traps. But by far most specifically, film. I think that film industry, whether it is actually the industry itself, or if it's individuals who do YouTube, I think that would be, or stream even, I think that would be that much more imperative and that much more logical and sensible to add those pedestrian and bicyclist paths on there, especially if you have a couple of alcoves, big alcoves, or maybe just one big one. That goes the main span of the middle part of the bridge. I think that would make perfect sense. It adds, there's a lot of things it would add. And plus, at the same time, in proximity to historic Fort Vancouver's airport, I can never remember what the fuck it's called. I don't think that's Pearson, but maybe it is. And then you have PDX. You have Portland International right there. So, on the takeoffs and approaches to PDX, people have that much better of a view, specifically, I would think, of takeoffs. And actually, so departures, but also incoming, now that I think about it, because of people coming in from the east, which would be the predominant source of traffic. So actually, that makes total sense. What they should do is they should put that there as well, because then you also have plane watchers who will be able to go and enjoy viewing the river and everything else and enjoying chilling there, but they'll also be able to have the entertainment of the planes. In fact, kids would fucking adore the excitement it would give them of a close approach or departure of a plane, a commercial airliner, going to and fro the airport. In fact, if you think about it, it would be really funny, and not funny, but fun for them, especially the kids and some families, I think, if they had enough forethought for it, because I know that's kind of old school, sadly to say, but it is these days. Where if you drop off dad or mom at the airport, you guys could then have plenty of time to get into a spot where you could park, walk up the bridge, or even take one of the buses if you now have a shuttle Select Express that may make a final stop right there, like right near the end of the bridge, on obviously in this case the Oregon side. But you could just go from there and then walk up the pedestrian part of the bridge, go to the alcove, and then wait for mom or dad's plane to take off. And then you could literally together wave to the plane goodbye. You know how much fucking fun that would be for the kids? That would be amazing. I think that would be super cool, and it would be like a permanent memory they would have. So like, it does add a lot more than you might think, just simply adding a pedestrian / bicyclist area with little alcoves or a big alcove on it for people to go kind of stop off and just hang out on the edge of it. Now, obviously, yes, there's always a concern logistically of like, but what about suicidal people? That makes it a lot easier to jump off and commit suicide. There's going to be a lot of idiots too. They're going to dare each other like teenagers to go and jump off the bridge. You don't want that, do you? Bad idea. I call bullshit on that. There's a lot of places, even in the United States, where they have bridges like that. And it's not as common as you might think. Especially considering they're looking for something that can guarantee kill them. The only way they're going to do that is if they have an opportunity to be able to, A, not be stopped, meaning there's no witnesses, there's nobody around. There's always going to be somebody around, unless it's like maybe 3 in the morning. Then at that point, there's probably not really anybody. But, you know, and they have something to help them drown, because they're not going to die just from jumping 116 feet down to the water's edge, you know, the water surface. They might, if they land just right, of course, like on their head at a bad angle, then they snap their neck and they'd be unconscious anyway. But like, because yeah, you could technically put in an encagement. That's a possibility too. But then see, you're getting to the semantics of the design, and that's not the point of what I'm trying to make. So I was going to depart from that there. But yeah. So the bridge building team is presenting the design to several local and state governments. July 2022. Including the cities and ports of Portland and Vancouver, and the Metro Regional Government, go figure. So almost, that was, the ones they listed were, 2 of 3 were Oregon. Very self-focused, of course. 9 bodies in all must approve the design before it can go on to the next phase, environmental assessment. The design includes a light rail connection, so see, they're not willing to give it up, but that's TriMet doing that. So they're still not giving up on the light rail thing. No matter how many people refuse to have it done, they want nothing like that at all. They're just like, nope, nope, nope. And it also adds 1 auxiliary lane in each direction to the existing 6 lanes. The auxiliary lane would directly connect some of the interchanges near the bridge using abrupt merges. That's been a point of contention for the environmental groups who say adding a lane will encourage more people to drive, exacerbating climate change. Climate change is normal, natural, and on time. So it's not, that part I don't give a fuck about. The rest of it's all bullshit when they're like, oh, we're all gonna die, the world's gonna burn. Bullshit. And I say that as an environmentalist, by the way. But, encourage more people to drive? Yes, it's called induced demand, and it is absolutely a legitimate thing. You see it all the time. In fact, we see it here in the Portland area. All the time. They add a new lane, and suddenly, there's that much more congestion. Well, how did that happen within a few months? Oh, right, because you added another lane. Because people see, oh, the congestion seemed to ease up. There seems to be a little better flow. I guess I'll drive now. I don't have to worry about as much. Well, guess what? Another few thousand people said the same thing. And you're back to square one again. Now you want to add another lane? Fuck you. Talk about banging your head against the wall, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. But then again, they're paid to do that by the Highway Commission, so... And the automobile and big oil lobbies, but whatever. The locally preferred alternative they're proposing, and either a lift bridge or a tunnel to accommodate the Coast Guard. Oh, I get it. Chris Smith, a member of the Just Crossing Alliance. Okay, I have questions. That just sounds sad. A coalition of about 24 local environmental and transportation advocates. Oh, you never want to hear that sentence, that word, that term, transportation advocacy, or transportation advocate group, or transportation advocates. You do not want to hear that, because they are never, and I mean never, advocates for transit. Ever. Ever. Look at the frickin' projects going on in South Central Chicago, and the transit advocacy organization and groups that are bitching about their genuinely, legitimately logical, amazing, true, genuine, like European level intermodal transportation. So, transit center? As transportation advocates, they're wholly against it. They say it will spawn further inequity and actually hurt transportation and lower the amount of people using it. Does that sound like a transportation advocates group to you? I didn't think so. That's not transportation advocacy. That's advocacy against it. Period. That's why you never want to hear that term. Second plan would keep the bridge from being delayed too much in case the design doesn't pass environmental reviews. He suggested alternatives could allow the project to be completed in phases, allowing local leaders to prioritize other regional projects as well. This plan will just sweep off all additional funding for a decade. He said a bridge built to 178 feet of clearance, as the Coast Guard is seeking, would require very steep ramps onto Hayden Island and into downtown Vancouver that would be especially difficult for bikers and pedestrians to use. No shit, Sherlock. It's kind of cool, though, that the Clark County and the Washington State commissions are still very much against the proposals, because of the fact that they are actually genuinely listening themselves to their residents, which is like unheard of for anything in political office anywhere in the world, especially the quote-unquote Western world, and even more so in the United States. It's unheard of. But it's genuinely coming from a place where they're listening to all their residents, and they're like, nobody fucking wants this. Especially if we're going to be made to pay half or more of the fucking bill. No. And on top of that, fuck no to light rail. Like, none of us want this. Why the fuck are you demanding you have to have a light rail? We don't want that. Nobody up here wants this. And you're going to make us also partially pay for that. The thing that we absolutely reject. That's one of the big sticking points in terms of being sticklers against it, is the light rail. Again, like I said earlier, I absolutely, implicitly, and wholeheartedly agree with them. There should be no light rail line across this. Especially considering it's a TriMet light rail line. That is a fucking disaster just begging to happen. It's a dumpster fire of a plan. You never, ever, ever, ever listen to TriMet. You never give them the light of day. You never fund them. You never, ever accept their proposal for a light rail line. Ever. We've had to learn that the hard way. All of us have. And especially the older generations who passed it back in '78, the transportation bond measure, to build the first light rail line, Max Line. In that bill in the fine print, just like, by the way, ST3 up in the Puget Sound area for Sound Transit, there's a fine print in it, which their ST3 is basically a direct clone of ours from '78. That's why all of us down here were like, don't you fucking be stupid, not listen to us, and pass it. They passed it anyway. Because they're idiots, and they're arrogant up in Seattle. They don't want to listen to any of us. In fact, their constant reasoning was, why should we listen to you? You don't know what you're talking about. It's never going to end up like that. We wouldn't have let it. It's in the fucking print, you idiot. Anyway. It's in the fine print. It said it basically told us specifically what we were doing is we were signing all of our rights away to protest. So in other words, you cannot deny an implementation of another new Max Line. We will force you to fund it by your tax money, even if you reject it. Doesn't matter how hard you fight against it, how much you bitch at us for it, for not do it, how much you refuse to pass bond measures, you will still be forced to pay for another line that you want nothing to do with. That's how the Orange Line happened. The Orange Line was rejected by the people in the corridor, as they call them, by the residents and the ridership. It was rejected by 56%. And they still forced us to pay for it. And we paid $7.8 billion for the Orange Line Max. $7.8 billion for the Orange Line Max. That's a 7.8 mile long light rail line. Only for just under 8 miles of rail. So in other words, a whole fucking $1 billion per mile. And we were forced to pay it against our will because we rejected it. But the fine print said we still had to pay for it. And they were still going to make us have to swallow it anyway. We don't have say. We signed that right away. Inside 1978. ST3, when it passed, Seattleites did that to themselves. So up there, you're going to have no one to blame but yourselves. Because we told you you're being stupid if you do this. And this is what will happen. Give her another 10 years. You cannot come crying back to us. We warned you. We told you. It was a clone. You didn't care. You arrogantly demanded, what can never happen here, you're going to pay for it dearly. And so with this max line, Clark County voters are being very, whether they realize it or not, they're being very intelligently skeptical about this and hateful of it. They're being very much so. But then again, it makes sense a lot of the writers that have to ride transit into Portland would reject it too. Because the bulkload of people that rode the original bus lines, like the 6, up into Vancouver, or up into the base of the I-5 bridge, before the yellow line was put into place and implemented in 2003, I believe it was, did not end up using the yellow line. They still refuse to use the yellow line, max. And for damn good reason. The bus is still more efficient. It's still more reliable, it's still better, and it's less trashy. It's a lot safer and cleaner. They prefer to take their own transit system, C-Tran, down to downtown Portland, or they'll take one of the other buses. They'll take one of their shuttle buses down to the other side of the bridge here in Oregon. They'll get off instead of right near where the yellow line, they could catch it. Instead, they catch one of TriMet's buses and take that. Almost all of them do that. Both going to and coming from. And they still do to this day. Because nobody fucking wants to ride the yellow line. At all. And the people who end up riding it for the first time are like, God damn, this is a shit line. This is so bad. The people on it are bad. The cleanliness is terrible. The quality's shit. You go like 15 miles an hour. You're basically crawling the entire time. And did you go where? To another ran down, unsafe hood? Yeah, no, we're good. And, for the record, the reason why contextually this is an important thing to add as well, besides the obvious that I've already covered, is the fact that that's the exact max line that TriMet and the whole advocacy is trying to pull up into Vancouver. So they're not trying to build a new line to just simply connect across the river even. No. They're trying to pull that line into Vancouver. It can't be allowed to happen. And fortunately, Clark County riders and voters are smart enough to recognize that. Whether they realize that that's really the reason why, or that is the reason why they're doing it, or because of the fact that they recognize, yeah, this is not a smart idea, just in general. Like, we just want nothing to do with that. If we want anything, we want a bus line, not that. Either way, they may or may not realize how fucking intelligent and smart they are really truly being, genuinely. So, keep up the pressure against it, Clark County, because you didn't sign off on the bill that we did in 78. And if you're forced to pay even a bit of it, or you get it forced down your throat too, you actually will have a federally legal lawsuit case where you can go and fight against TriMet, which would be just as much in our favor, and we would back you up wholeheartedly on that. If that happens. And I hope it doesn't, but if it does, you need to know that you need to sue them. You need to send a lawsuit on their ass. Even to the commission for this bridge and the state government, because they're just as complicit. Sue the fucking state. Sue fucking TriMet. Sue the Bridge Replacement Commission here in Oregon. Because they fucking deserve it, and legally, they absolutely violated federal rights and laws, forcing you to have something that you absolutely rejected, when it's not even their jurisdiction. It's not in their legal grounds of right as a government to do, or an agency, a company to do. So God forbid if that happens, and I hope it doesn't, but if it does, sue the asses of these assholes. And we will back you up on that. But yeah, long story short, with this kind of shit going on, dude, I'm not kidding. This bridge is never going to get rebuilt. At this rate, this bridge is just going to eventually collapse due to age into the Columbia. And we'll have nothing but the I-205 bridge. Which, I had a thought earlier. When I first saw the article, I just read little bits of to you here. If the I-5 bridge, already by like 2010, 2004, 2010, that area, was already said it needed to be replaced due to age and some structural issues because of its age. And capacity issues, so on. If that's the case, then I guarantee it's also the case for the I-205 bridge crossing the Columbia as well. But they just put it on the back burner, hoping that within, say, the next 5 to 10 years, they'll finally actually be rebuilding this I-5 bridge and replacing it. So that once they complete that, then they can go and pull it back off the back burner, put it on the front one, and say, okay, now we need to replace the I-205 bridge, and then restart this whole exact same process all over again. If they do not pull it off in the next 5 to 10 years, and it still isn't reconstructed, and we still have the same bridge in place, then I can just about guarantee they'll finally be forced to have to put it on the front burner, the other front burner too, alongside the I-5 bridge replacement plan, and say, hey, we need to replace the I-205 bridge too. Because the I-205 bridge obviously doesn't get remotely as much traffic as the I-5 bridge, but the I-205 bridge has a absurd amount of people using it every single goddamn day of the year too. A stupid amount. There's tons of people who use it. In fact, there's people who literally will go all the way around Charlie's Barn from the west side or the south end of the edge of the metro area, and they'll literally use 205 to get up into Washington to bypass the absolute clusterfuck that is the traffic jams that you have perpetually on the I-5 bridge. And a lot of times they actually can save 10, 15, 25, 30 minutes of time going all the way around, adding like 20, 30, 40 extra miles to their trips. And they still can get across and where they need to get to quicker than if they took the I-5 bridge. That's how many more people are now opting to use I-205 instead of I-5 to cross the Columbia. But then again, those are your only two choices in the Portland metro area to cross the Columbia. You don't have literally any other choices, which in itself is already a stupid thing. And you can't really future-proof across, future-proof against congestion and other issues you're going to have when you have this imperative of arterials and interstate systems as your only two options to cross the fucking river. It's just not going to happen. It's actually stupid by design. Then again, that might actually be the reason why they did it. But U.S. planning is the dumbest shit. It absolutely has never made sense. I know it never will. And it infuriates me. And this is just one of those cases. Because I guarantee that I-205 needs replacement now too. That's it, probably at the exact same time they knew it would. Or at least within another 5-10 years of when they pointed out the I-5 needs replacement because of its age. Because they're roughly the same age. They're maybe 5-10 years apart max. But they're roughly the same age. So as a result, I guarantee I-205 needs to be replaced too. It's a guarantee, especially by now, that like basically 15-20 years down the road, I-205 needs replacement too. They're just not saying it because of the fact that they're obviously, like I said, I guarantee that's the political aim, is they're only focused on I-5 right now. And then once it's completed, or if it never gets completed and they still can't make a damn decision on it, and it's still just sitting there as it is, supposedly archaic and needing replacement 20 years down the road, then they'll probably be forced to put I-205 back on the front burner with I-5s and say, we need to replace both of these now. And then just do the same fucking thing where there's nothing but disputes from every angle and every possible community, person, group, everything. It's a clusterfuck, as usual for U.S. infrastructure, but there you go. Welcome to America, baby. Home of the fucking stupid, land of the arrogant.